Hello again, gamers. Welcome back to the Board Game Captain. I'm the Captain, and today I am joined by the game designer and owner of XV Games, Marcello Bertocchi, when we are going to be counting down our top 10 favorite role-playing games. So first off, Marcello, thank you for joining me for this top 10 list.
Hello, thank you.
And before we get started, so the rules for the top 10 list are that we can pick any role-playing game as long as we personally had nothing to do with either the design or publishing of it. But Marcello was talking to me about, before we made our list, that there's a game that he just published in Italian recently, not in any other language yet. And this particular game, the reason he published it was because he loves it so much. So I told him we should put it on as a honorable mention. So Marcello, what is your honorable mention?
My honorable mention is The Extraordinary Adventures of Baron Munchausen by James Wallis, that I just published in Italian, but I will not publish in any other languages, so go buy the Fantasy Flight Edition 2015. This one. It's a great edition, and it's a great game because, and I love it particularly, because it was the first game that introduced narrative role-playing game in 1999. And that showed that you could have role-playing without dice, without a GM, without preparation, just sitting down with friends and talking. And still after more than 20 years, I still think it's one of the best narrative role-playing games out there. So go buy Fantasy Flight Edition 2015.
Fair enough. And obviously, he's not promoting his own edition. He's telling you.
No, I'm promoting another edition, another publisher's edition. But really, if you don't know this game, just go check it out in some way because it's great.
Number 10.
All right, so I'm going to start us off with my number 10 here. So my number 10 favorite role-playing game is Rocket Age. So Rocket Age is a role-playing game that's made to represent the old movie serials from like the 40s and also the 50s sci-fi type shows, things like Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers. And it's done with a really very elegant and streamlined system. And one of my favorite mechanical things about Rocket Age is that you get these tokens that you can spend occasionally to alter a scene, to make something available, and sometimes you can get special abilities during character creation with certain characters to be able to create something with those tokens. They can be used as a resource. I played a game with the designer where I had a character who loved to jewelry rig things, loved to MacGyver things out of spare parts, and during a particular adventure that we were playing on Mars, where we were fighting against some Nazis on Mars, I used my ability and spent some tokens to make an EMP device to take out their evil mech, and we were able to defeat them. And it was a lot of fun, and I've played it a number of times now. I own it. I'm a big fan of Rocket Age, and that is why it is my number 10 favorite role-playing game.
So, my top 10, number 10, is a great classic. Is from Avalon Hill, Call of Cthulhu.
Oh, yeah.
I think you know this one.
Oh, yes. Everybody knows that one. It's very old school, very classic.
Almost everybody knows this one. It's very old school, but in the old school games, it was one of my favorites. And I still look up to some content when I do my job as a game designer because it was one of the first classics and one that teach us that you could play with investigation and horror, and that you can play role-playing games without being the hero, but just being somebody that dies very quickly and easily.
Indeed. That is definitely something that happens in Call of Cthulhu for sure.
Number 9.
Okay, so my number 9 favorite role-playing game is Monsters and Other Childish Things. So Monsters and Other Childish Things is a role-playing game where you play a child, like a 9-year-old kid who has an imaginary friend that is a monster from outside of time and space. Now, I saw someone else on the internet refer to this game as Calvin and Hobbes meets the Call of Cthulhu, which I think is a brilliant description because it kind of feels like that. You're like Calvin and Hobbes is real, but Hobbes is like a mythos monster that loves you and wants to protect you, but doing so means it's probably going to eat your school bully and possibly destroy your teacher's car because they gave you detention. And it's hilarious. And the other thing I really like about this system in particular, for Monsters and Other Childish Things, is that not only do you make your character of the child, you also make the monster that in most cases acts as an NPC until you're in combat and then he gets controlled in combat. But creating of the monster and its abilities is one of the most fluid and creative character creation processes I have ever seen in any role-playing game. Really awesome. And that's why Monsters and Other Childish Things is my number 9.
Yeah, I know this one. I've read this one. I have the PDF of the rulebook, and I still haven't played it, but I appreciated reading it very much.
I highly recommend that one, for sure.
So my number 9 is another Avalon Hill game, and it's another old game, and it's Tales from the Floating Vagabond. And it's a very old game, 1991, and the system is pretty standard, I would say. Nothing very different from classical games. But the special thing about this game is that it's about a completely weird world where you can do everything, because it talks about this floating vagabond that is like a pub in the center of the universe where everything from every world meets and teams up to go into very weird places and do very weird things. And all abilities and all checks and adventures you have are completely nonsense and all is based on nonsense. So we have completely nonsense characters and abilities and like you always find something right for the situation in your pockets or that kind of stuff. It's very very old, not very special in the system, but very special in the concept.
It sounds very like classical. I was going to say, it sounds like it reminds me a bit of it, as if you would be role playing in the Hitchhiker's Guide from the Galaxy universe, kind of silly like that.
Yeah, but even further.
Oh wow, very cool.
Yeah, you have like in the cover you can see like some kind of investigator dogman and it's like Hitchhiker Guide but multiplied by 10 and more weirder.
I've never played that one. That's very interesting.
I just played it a couple of times, but it was pretty interesting.
Number 8.
So my number 8 favorite role-playing game is one that I've only reviewed recently. It was Things from the Flood. This was the sequel game to Tales from the Loop. It used the same basic system, so all 6-sided dice. It's the Year Zero engine system that is used by Freely Publishing over in Sweden. They have variations of this system used for just about 90% of their role-playing games. There's only a couple that don't use it. And this is one of my favorite implementations of it. It's even more streamlined and even more focused. But unlike Tales from the Loop, which you're playing as little kids, and because that the characters were not capable of dying, which I did feel in Tales from the Loop that kind of took some of the tension out of it. In Things from the Flood, you're playing teenagers, and you were totally capable of dying. And so that I felt like the addition of the tension added back in, and the other slight changes they had done to the system made Things from the Flood actually far superior to Tales from the Loop, and that's why it made my list holding on to my number 8. World-wise, it is an alternate world, 1990s, with strange, bizarre scientific experiments going on, portals opening to other dimensions, crazy robots and mutants, and really bizarre and really fun. I definitely recommend Things from the Flood.
Yeah, I know Tales from the Loop, but I didn't know this one. I will check it out. Seems more interesting. My number 8 is another Lovecraftian game, and it's another old one, and it's De Profundis. Profundis by a Polish Michael Orax. The particular thing about this small role-playing game is that it is an epistolary role-playing game. So it's completely done by letters, by written letters, handwritten letters, instead of talking. It's a two-players game only, and you actually role-play this game through letters.
So is this meant to be done like over a long period of time, kind of like doing
over a long
email?
period of time, and it actually suggests not to use emails, but to actually write handwritten letters, and to write these handwritten letters and to ship them by post, and to play with the other player with this post, because it's about this kind of Lovecraftian situation where these two people are writing themselves what they are discovering on this Lovecraftian situation, and the game develops on this handwritten system.
That sounds so strange, like so.
It's very, very weird, but it's very, very well done. And I actually understand why they say to actually write the letters, because it gives you more the feeling of the situation, and the fact that you have to wait for the other step to come. And it's very particular, but it's very interesting. Even just to read the manual is very interesting. It's very, very well written also, because it's written like a letter. So it's written like somebody in the game is writing, and it explains the rules doing so.
And that's absolutely fascinating. If I can find a copy of that, I might have to check that out. De Profundis.
Yeah, De Profundis, yeah.
Wow.
I think at least in PDF you should be able to find it.
I'm gonna keep an eye out for that one. That's
Number 7.
My number 7 favorite role-playing game is Mouse Guard 2nd Edition. So the Mouse Guard role-playing game, if you're not familiar with the Mouse Guard graphic novels, it's based on those. They are graphic novels where you have these mouse city-states and communities, and they have like a medieval level technology. So they have swords and spears and bows and arrows. And the Mouse Guard are these knightly heroes who go around protecting the world of the mice against their enemies, like the ferrets and the weasels and other predators that would eat the mice. In the role-playing game, you take on the role of these Mouse Guard, and the game uses a variation of the Burning Wheel system, which, if you're not familiar, is a very interesting system that uses cards and dice. Use cards to plan out what your moves are. There are multiple options, and they have kind of a rock, scissors, paper where certain moves are better against certain other moves. So your opponent puts the game master acting as your opponent, controlling, say, the snake that you're fighting against. Put some cards down, then you reveal your cards. They certain cards get advantages against other cards, and then you roll dice to see if you succeed or fail. All 6-sided dice for this system as well. But it's a really fascinating system. The Burning Wheel system is really cool, and the world of making these heroic sword fighting mice is just fantastic. I love the world of Mouse Guard, and I think the game was an incredibly fascinating design, and it was brilliant to implement the Burning Wheel in a slightly streamed down rule system version for Mouse Guard, and that's why it's my number 7.
Yeah, I also love the Mouse Guard background. I have many comics and board games, and I never played the role-playing game, but I know they were working on a new Italian edition too. So
cool.
Maybe when it comes out, I will finally get it.
If they do, you should get the box set, because when they release their box sets, they're great, because the box sets always come with the cards and the special dice and the books all in one, which is really fantastic.
So my number 7 is another old game, and it's one from the World of Darkness, and it's Changeling the Dreaming. Because I played a lot of the World of Darkness, and Changeling was my favorite part of the World of Darkness to play. I still have good memories of some campaigns when I was in university, and I just love this too, even to just read this background of the Changelings, and it's the one that is most near my heart about the World of Darkness.
I used to play a lot of the World of Darkness stuff also back when I was in high school. My big ones were, my number one was Mage the Ascension, and my number two was Werewolf the Apocalypse. I loved both of those a lot. I thought the spell system for Mage was super creative, so I really dug that a lot. But those were some really fun games.
I used to play a campaign in the university where we were playing a changeling, a werewolf, and a mage against vampires.
It's a good way to do it. I was going to say the vampires. I mean, I know they started with vampire, but they made better bad guys. I always thought they made better villains.
Indeed.
And they didn't mix as well with the other groups because the werewolves always hated them and everything. So.
Number 6.
My number 6 favorite role-playing game is also kind of a newer one. This is one that I reviewed about maybe a year ago now. It is the Labyrinth adventure game. So this is a very light role-playing game where the entirety of the adventure is all already in the single book. The rule system only needs 2 dice, which come in the book in a little recessed area, which is so awesome. I love that they did that. The book comes wrapped in plastic. You open up the plastic, you open up the book, and the 2 dice are right in there. Everything you need to play is right there, except for just Xeroxing the character sheets. And then the characters are so quick to make that this is the sort of game you can get a group together on a moment's notice. You can be like, hey, do you guys want to play this? And right then and there, make your characters. 10 to 15 minutes later, you're playing the game, and you're figuring out when the next time is you're going to play. And it really only works in little self-contained, mini-series story arcs, because eventually you're going to get to the end of the book and defeat the Goblin King, and that's going to be the end of the game. But again, it's based obviously on the movie Labyrinth with David Bowie and Jennifer Connelly from the 80s, which is one of my favorite movies. And I think they did a fantastic job with both the very simplified, easy to learn, easy to play system, good for all ages, as well as getting the feel of the movie into the actual adventure hooks for the different parts of the book. Really well done, and that's why it's my number 6.
Yeah, I put my hands on the Italian edition of that one, and I appreciate it. I have not played it, but I appreciated the quality of the production, and it seems the quality of the product also. And also it's Labyrinth, I mean. Everybody loves Labyrinth.
Yes.
So my number 6 is another old game by an American designer called Aldo Ghiozzi, and it's a very weird game called Og that came out in many very different versions, very different also in the rules, but the concept is always the same. So you role play as a primitive tribe of primitive men, and the particular thing is that you have a very limited number of words that tribe knows. So at the beginning of the game, you will have like 10 words that your tribe knows, associated to the most important things and actions. And while you role play, that's the only words you can use. So you cannot use any other words because you're a primitive man and you have no other words. And so it's all played around the difficulties of role playing with a restricted number of words you can use, with a limited number of words you can use. And it's very funny. It's almost like a party game kind of role playing game, because everybody's having fun because they use this weird word to say stuff, and they cannot say everything, but they have to play around it to make other people understand what they're meaning. And it's very, very fun and very interesting concept.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one either. So is it more for like one-off games then, or does it actually do well for a campaign if it keeps going?
Yeah, and the first edition is very classical, so it has rules also for like levels and abilities. You have skills and stuff like that. There are other editions that are less based on that kind of stuff, are more based on more narrative versions, but they always work around this concept. The first edition is very classical in the playing system, out of that worth limitation thing. So you can play campaigns, you have experience points and skills and whatever.
number 5.
My number 5 favorite role-playing game is another one from Free League Publishing and another one using the Year Zero engine. I'm a big fan of the Year Zero engine. Some of their games have used it better than others, and all the ones on my list are some of my favorites. This, of course, being no exception. This is Vesson. So Vesson is one where you're playing in the 1800s, and you are essentially people who are able to see supernatural creatures, whereas most other people cannot perceive them, and you travel around Northern Europe attempting to intercede in situations where there are conflicts between normal humans and supernatural creatures, and either in the case of evil or rogue supernatural creatures, you might need to destroy or kill them, but in other cases, you can possibly come to a broker a peace and figure out a way for them, the humans, to coexist. But either way, this is a really cool implementation of the system. And one of the things that's really cool about Vesson is they have this whole system where as you achieve successful missions and you gain notoriety and gain wealth, your organization of supernatural investigators, you get to put some of that wealth towards improving your resources. You get to build new rooms in the castle that is your home base. And the new rooms will give you abilities and things to use. So you build an armory, you're going to have access to more weapons. You build a library, you're going to be able to do research and have access to more information before you go on an adventure. You set up a bar in the town that you own and have employees in, you'll have more funds available. And these are all kind of the things you can do. And I love that whole simulation aspect in it of putting your resources towards these buying of these modules, if you will, these rooms or these businesses that can then help you long term in the future for all of your future games. And there's in between games, the game encourages a lot of discussion with the other players. Okay, what do we want to work towards? What are we going to want to improve for next time and the time after that and the time after that? And that is why Vesson is my number 5 favorite role-playing game.
Yeah, I've heard about this game, and I also watched the television show that I think recalls a bit about the concept.
Well, yeah, I was going to say they're working off a similar concept from folklore for sure. Yeah. But definitely, it definitely. If you watch Grimm, you definitely will get Grimm vibes from reading the book of Vesson for sure.
So my number 5 is a pretty recent game that was on Kickstarter some years ago, and I had some implementation, and it's Abstract Dungeon. That I have to admit that at the first time I just bought it blind. I didn't know what it was, but it was abstract, so I bought it. And I actually found a very solid game. It's a very light system for sandbox kind of fantasy adventures. But the very interesting thing is that you don't throw your dice during the game when you have to do something, but all your dice are thrown at the beginning of the game, and you put them in your skills or characteristics, and then during the game you spend your dice during the game.
That's interesting.
It's very interesting, and it's very strategical actually, and because you know what you need to pass some tests or some problems, but you have to manage your throws. So you have to decide, do I want to use this dice now to pass this problem, but I just need a 4. I have only a 6 in that skill. What can I do? And actually, another interesting thing is that it's not as math heavy as it seems, because actually it's more narrative than it seems. Because when the GM gives you a problem, some kind of problem to solve, and you says it's like a physical, you need to solve it with a physical skill, you can actually ask to solve it with verbal skill, for example, using another skill then, and you can switch the resolution of the problems based on from which skill you use your dice.
Very cool. That's one I would definitely be interested in checking.
It's very
out.
interesting
Really
system.
fun.
Also very light, very easy to use, very easy to improvise with. So it's very easy for a sandbox and for adventures that you don't, even the GM doesn't actually know where it's going, because it's very easy to make up stuff while you go. Very
cool.
interesting system.
I'm gonna have to keep an eye out for that one. That sounds really interesting. Definitely.
Number 4.
My number 4 favorite role-playing game is my absolute favorite generic role-playing game system to be used with any genre, and this is Savage Worlds. So, I mean, the generic role-playing game system concept has been around for a long time. One of the earlier games that used it was GURPS, which is for General Universal Role-Play System. So Savage Worlds, like those other older systems, it's just a system in a book, no world, no setting. They have a couple of sample adventures in the back of the book that are in different settings, some in modern day, some, in the near past, some in the ancient past, some in fantasy world, some in sci-fi world. And then there are tons of other books you can buy, which will be full-on settings for, fantasy or sci-fi or horror or whatever it might be. But the book itself is a toolbox with a nice, simplified, streamlined system. I have run the Savage Worlds system for 2 long-term campaigns as game master, and I've loved it both times. It's very easy to run. The stats are very easy to understand because your stats are literally just a die type. Lowest possible stat is a D4. If you get enough experience to raise that stat, it goes to a D6. You raise it again, it goes to a D8, then a D12. D12 is usually max. Those in some of the setting books, you can get a D12 plus 1 or a D12 plus 2 to even go above a D12 sometimes. But yeah, it's so easy to look at your sheet and you say, well, that's going to be a roll in with this attribute, with this skill. What die do you have in that skill? And that's it. And it's so easy to learn, so easy to play, and very easy to run. And that's why Savage Worlds is my number 4 favorite role-playing game.
Yeah, I know Savage Worlds very well, but I actually almost never played it, I think. I don't know why. I know the system very well.
I did one for Sundered Skies, which is really great. We did the entire Sundered Skies campaign that's in the book. And I did another one for Rift's Savage World, where I did a whole big long campaign for Rift's Savage World, and both of them were really a lot of fun. Both of them went over a year of role playing. They were proper long-term, multi-year affairs.
Yeah, very solid game. So my number 4 is a game I don't think you will easily try because it's only in Japanese language. And one that I recently found and that blasted me because I think it's probably the best introductive role-playing game out there at the moment in the world, and it's all in Japanese. So that's the problem.
That's really too bad. But what's
And the game is Nobi Nobi TRPG. It has a very small box. And that contains cards and dice and D6. But the concept is incredibly solid because it's all based on cards. So the GM shifts between players, and each player has a character. He has a character. The character has only 2 skills and 2 skills and 1 ability. And the GM just draws a scene card, reads what the scene is. So the card gives you the scene you are in as a group. And then there is 1 character that is like the main character of the scene that will have to react to the situation. And sometimes the situation just needs you to roll a die and see what happens. And sometimes the situation actually requires you to solve it by role play, not by throwing dice. And you have to role play, but you have to role play a very specific situation. Like you were camping in the woods and the spirit of the wood came out. It's angry because you were burning some wood. And it's okay, role play talking to the spirit of the wood. So it gives you very, very specific situation, very focused situation to solve. And then the GM and the main character switch to other characters. And you go on like this and for some time. And then you draw a climax card that is the ending of the game. that is a bigger problem, a bigger sin, and it's over. But it's incredibly easy. Also, every time you have a sin, based on if you pass it or not, with the throwing of the dice or with the role-playing situation, you will draw a light or dark card. That doesn't mean you fail or have success, but it just changes narratively the outcomes of the scene. So it's very, very easy because you just draw a card, read what is written, and solve the situation. And throw dice or role-play a small situation. And then you switch to another player. So it's very, very good for introduction people that have never played a role-playing game, because when you ask them to role-play, it's just, okay, now you are the GM, but you just have to read this scene and try to connect it to the previous scene. And then if you are the main character, you just have to role-play, but this very specific small scene. So it's very easy to introduce people to a role-playing game with this one. Really easy.
It's too bad that one's not available in English, because I would like to try that. That sounds like fun.
It's very, very good. But yeah, you need somebody that can read. At least one person that can read Japanese.
You're the only person I know that can read Japanese.
And also another publisher made it in two new editions. That one is the original fantasy one. They have the steampunk one.
Oh, cool.
And another horror one.
Well, I wonder if they have any plans to release it in English. That would be really cool. I hope.
I will ask them. I know.
Oh, do you know the publisher? Or?
Yeah, I know the publisher. The Japanese publisher.
Well, I hope that at some point they'll release it in English. I'd love to get a copy of one of those and check it out. That sounds really interesting for sure.
It's very, very. I mean, if you are like a very experienced role-playing gamer, it's not. I think it's not what you want for a role-playing game, because it's very.
Sometimes you want like just a one-off game like that for a quick role-playing. We just have some friends over, and that's cool though. I like that.
Yeah, because it will not scare them off. They will not have to create long scenes or whatever. Just read this card and do what is written here, and maybe you have to role play a little bit or throw some dice, and it's very, very nice. Very, very, very solid product.
Number 3.
My number 3 favorite role-playing game is Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So I'm running Pathfinder 2nd Edition right now. If you're not familiar with it, Pathfinder 2nd Edition is a fairly general fantasy universe role-playing game that evolved out of the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons. When Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition was out, they had an open license where anyone was allowed, if they wanted to make games using that system, and it was called the D20 system. And when they moved on to 4th edition, Paizo, who had previously been doing some products for Dungeons & Dragons, including a magazine for Dungeons & Dragons and some card products and things like that, decided they were going to make a role-playing game that was based on D20 system, based on the 3rd edition system, but fixed some of the issues that they had with it, and that was 1st edition Pathfinder, and then later they eventually decided to upgrade it and fix some issues that they felt they had with it after years of playing with it and developing for it, and now they have 2nd edition. I got into it with 2nd edition and really like it and have been running it. It's a very crunchy system, a lot of rules, a lot of ability to really dig through and look through all the cool abilities when you're leveling up and really try to figure out like what ability is going to give me some of the coolest effects in the game. And now, rules-heavy, crunchy games aren't for everybody, but if they are for you, Pathfinder 2nd Edition is a lot of fun, and that's why it is my number 3 favorite role-playing game.
Yeah, I grew up with D&D 3 and 3.5, and then I played a lot of Pathfinder 2 when I was younger. I've not been playing that for a long time, but I still think that probably is one of the most loved versions of the Dungeons and Dragons and Dungeons and Dragons-like games. And Pathfinder is just that with another approach, but very similar.
Oh yes, of course, very similar to 3rd.
Very good. Yeah. So my number 3 is another Japanese game, but this time it's available in English too, because some years ago they did it when a Kickstarter. They made a translation of some parts of it. I think not all the content available, but some parts of it. And it's Yu Yake Koyake, and in English I think it's Golden Sky Stories.
It's called what in English?
Golden Sky Stories.
Golden Sky Stories. Got it.
And it's very interesting. It's the same designer as the Made RPG. Maybe you've heard of it.
Oh.
And the particular thing about this one is that it's a game without dice, and it's a game completely without violence and without contrast. That is very, very weird to play. It's incredibly weird to play because it's a game completely based on positive interaction and friendship and good relationship. So you have no fights, you have no enemies, you have no monsters. Actually, you are the monster because the character are these henge. The henge are in the Shintoism are the animals that can morph into humans. They are like some like the tanuki or the kitsune. If you have heard something about
course.
those,
Yeah,
so they are animals that can change shape, like shapeshifters. But they are very positive ones. So they just they have powers, and these powers actually rule-wise are powered by the relation they can create, a positive relationship they create with other henge and with the inhabitants of this small rural village in Japan. And that power up the powers, and they use these powers to help the inhabitants of this village with their everyday life problems, like they lost something or very normal stuff. And it seems very bland if you think about it, but actually playing something completely without any fight, without any monster, without any problem, without any violence, and without any contrast between players, it's very, very difficult, but very, very interesting.
I would definitely give it a try. I'm curious as to how it works. I mean, you had me interested as soon as you told me I could be a tanuki. I love the raccoon dog spirits from Japanese folklore. I think they're fantastic. Kitsune as well. I love the nine-tailed fox. Yeah. They're fantastic as well. I like a lot of stuff from Japanese folklore. But I'd be very interested to see how it works out when there's literally no conflict.
Literally no conflict in this game. Literally no conflict. Neither between players, neither between player and NPCs.
So what was the English? Because I want to keep an eye out for this.
Golden Sky Stories. Golden
Sky Stories. Very cool. I'm going to definitely keep an eye out for that. That's an interesting sounding game.
Also, it's another game very nice for as an introductory game for non-role players because
probably for kids too, I imagine.
Yeah. And for kids too, yeah.
Number 2.
So a bit of a contrast to that. My number 2 favorite role-playing game is not for kids. Not for kids at all, because it is going to be bloody, it is going to be violent, and you are probably going to die. And then the game master might give you another character to play, and they'll die too. And that is Alien, the role-playing game. Because Alien, the role-playing game, is meant to be played out very much like the movie Alien, or a few other movies from the Alien series. It very much takes most of its cues from Alien or Aliens. So if you play it out, it has 2 different modes. One mode is to play it out as a one-off game, and a one-off game would be basically playing out like the first movie Alien or the second movie Alien, depending on what kind of characters you want to play. You run into the alien or alien creatures. They're going to be very difficult to fight. They're going to kill a lot of your characters as you go through. There will be NPCs that you can then take over and start using. But again, like I say, you're going to die. Usually by the end of the game, if anyone survives, and that's a big if, but if they do, 1, 2, or 3 characters might survive. I have run this. It's a lot of fun. It makes a great one-off horror game. I haven't tried the campaign mode yet, but they also have a campaign mode where what you do is it plays like a mini-series where most of the episodes in the mini-series, you're either fighting other sort of alien wildlife or dealing with evil humans or things like that. And then in the final episode of the mini-series, usually when you do a mini-series, you're probably playing something like the Marines from the second movie, Aliens. And in the final episode, you get sent on that fateful mission where you go up against the xenomorphs, and a bunch of you get melted from acid blood, or accidentally lit on fire, or ripped to pieces. And yeah, it's my number 2 favorite role-playing game, but it is my number 1 favorite horror-themed role-playing game system ever, and it is also my number 1 favorite implementation of the Year Zero engine from Free League Publishing. I think this was the best implementation they ever did with the Alien role-playing game. Absolutely phenomenal. If you're a fan of Alien, check it out.
Yeah, I don't know this one, but I will check it out, and I think you showed very well how gruesome it is. But it has to be. I mean, it's Alien.
Yeah.
So my number 2 is another game without dice and without GM, because I love games without GM and without dice. But this one is you have your characters and stuff. It's Flotsam. It's the concept is that you are in this future on this like space station where the kind of people are very stratified, so they are very rich people, and everybody is divided, and you are in the lower class of people. So you are everybody of your characters is like an outcast or something like that, and you have to try to survive in this situation. And the thing I love about this game is the gameplay, the rule system, because it works on a system that shows you very well how to play your good traits, but all your perks, but also your flaws. Because it works on some tokens. You have some tokens, and when you spend one of your token, you can get a success in some of your abilities. So if you are a character that can fight well, you spend 1 token, you get 1 success in something fight related. If you can talk, you can spend the tokens to get successes in talking. But to get back tokens, so to earn tokens, to recover tokens, you have to use your flaws. So you have to fail, you have to put yourself in dangerous situation, you have to put other of your friends in dangerous situation. So you have your flaws, and when you play with your flaws, so you fail, you have problems, you get hurt, you get back token that you can spend to get successes. So it's a system very, very good and interesting to make you play not only these heroes that can always have success in everything because you roll high, you can roll high. It's like you have to roll low to roll high.
And how does it work with no game master? Is it another one where all the events are
kind of
in the
like
book?
more modern, shared narrative kind of games where everybody can introduce element to the scene.
Oh, okay. Interesting. That's one I've done.
Because you don't have to roll to get successes. Like somebody introduces something in the scene, and you get a success if you spend tokens. It's just automatic, but you have to spend those, and then you have to recover them by failing.
Very interesting. I'm going to keep an eye out for that one.
Yeah, it's very, very solid system, and especially if you like to play not powerful characters.
And now it is time for number 1.
My number 1 favorite role-playing game of all time, one I have played both as a player and run as a game master, and has been my favorite since I bought it in probably around 1999 or 2000. This is probably let me take a look. I think this is the oldest game on my list, is my number 1, and it is Novellus. So Novellus 2nd edition specifically, which is generally known by fans of the game as the Big White Book, because 2nd edition is a big white hardcover book. It's a really interesting game system where all the players get to be gods. You are a family or pantheon of deities in character creation, which it has also a very creative method of character creation. You pick what you are the god of. For instance, I once role-played as the god of doorways, and then that was what I was the god of. I've had players play as things of, let's say I had the goddess of pain, I had the god of hatred, I had the god of fire, I had the goddess of cats, I had a player play the goddess of toys, I had, I'm trying to think what what are the things where people the gods of? There were lots of it because you could come up with almost anything. You could be any kind of concept, whether physical or abstract, and then you have stats which represent your abilities in different areas, and it's a completely diceless system. The concept is that if a god is capable of doing something, it has a 0% chance of failure. So if you go to do something, and if you have the level and that stat to do it, you do it unless you were directly opposed by someone else with godly power. In which case, you both figure out how much power you're putting into it, and then you reveal it. And there are temporary points you can spend to boost your power. And whoever put the more power into it, they succeed and succeed again automatically. Really cool system, very interesting. It's got 4 stats. The stats cover everything. And each of those stats then has temporary points to boost them up just for single effects. But the game very much emphasizes role-playing over action, though action still does happen. One of the most, especially with the power over your control over whatever you are the god of, this is one of the most creative systems I have ever seen. Again, specifically 2nd edition. I never played 1st edition, and 3rd edition, I didn't like the changes in the style they went with for 3rd edition. So 2nd edition is still my favorite. If you ever see a copy of this in a used bookstore or at a garage sale, grab it because Novella 2nd edition is phenomenal, and that's why it's my #1 favorite role-playing game.
Yeah, I know Novella very well, also because it was published first by Hogshead Publishing. That was the publisher of James Wallace, that is the designer of Baron Munchausen, and also my number 9 was the Profundis, the Letters one, was published by Hogshead Publishing. It was had very good games. Novella is a great game. Actually, I tried to get the rights to make it in Italian, but I failed.
Oh.
So my number 1 is a very weird game, but it's one I think is one of the best games for narrative purpose out there, and it's Microscope by Ben Robbins. And it's great because it's another game without GM, without dice, without anything actually. The only thing that you need is some like some blank small papers. And the particular thing about Microscope is that you don't role play a character, but everybody together, you role play a complete history of something. So you role play like the history of a planet or a tribe or a kingdom or whatever you want. And what you do is that you start introducing some macro events in the history. So when it's born and where it's going, and then you start putting these sheets inside to create like big points in the history, and then you expand them into smaller events. And inside these events, you can actually role play scenes inside the events. And in the scenes, every player is getting a role in the scene, so you role play that specific scene, but you are not doing that kind of stuff in time order. You can go in the future and then you role play something in the past that might be correlated to something that happened in the future that you already put out in the future, but you know that, so you can make something about why that happened 200 years before or 2,000 years before, and you go on adding elements to this history and role playing particular scenes that lead to bigger events that lead to bigger points in history, and doing so you're creating the complete history of something, of a kingdom or a planet or whatever, and it's just great. You are making up a world, a history.
That's very creative. That's a very creative. I actually have a game that's similar to that. I can't remember the name offhand, but instead of creating, you're actually in the one I have, which I'll put the name up on the screen, but the one I have is the opposite. You're destroying a civilization. The whole thing is that you're playing out like the downfall of a great civilization. You start by creating the civilization before the game starts, and then again, similarly, you do scenes. Everybody plays different characters in the scenes, and one of the big things you have to do is you have to make a flaw to that civilization that is eventually going to lead to its downfall. So similar kind of concept, though, but similar but opposite.
Yeah, but opposite. Yeah. Now here you actually also roll the downfall of the population or tribe or ward or whatever, because you do all the arc of that thing you're playing. Yeah, but it's even good as a narrative exercise, like for storytellers or writers or people who work with words.
Very cool. All right, so there you guys have it. Those are our top 10 favorite role-playing games. There in the links down below, there's going to be a link to BoardGameCaptain.com, as well as to my Patreon if you're in a position to would like to help out the channel, and as well to my Teespring store where you can get Board Game Captain merchandise, and as well as to XV Games, which is Marcello's company. So go check them out and buy some XV Games. I've done a lot of reviews of their stuff. Marcello puts out a lot of really cool games, so check that out. And feel free to comment down below. Tell us, what are your favorite role-playing games? What games did not make either one of our lists that you love? Comment down below. And until next time, game on.
Bye.